Hi there, me again. We're continuing our discussion of the Mona Lisa, and we're on week 5, which is focused on the eternal feminine. Today in class, we touched upon a text by Walter Pater, which was from, I want to say 1873. And I'll just review that quickly, and then we'll look at 2 other texts from the 19th century, which both talk about the Mona Lisa. Before we proceed, I had a thought that it's probably a good idea to, while we're consulting these kind of somewhat obscure texts, obscure poems, that are quite old and that use really a lot of out-of-date terminology. Some of them are translations. I think the middle one is a translation from French. But, you know, even the English is really a little bit obscure. So I think it would be helpful to make a little vocab list. I certainly have my dictionary up and running on my page here, and I'll do a couple of, I'll look up a couple of terms that we encounter because they're foreign to me as well. And of course, I still consult a dictionary. Learning is ongoing. Anyway, I just wanted to encourage you to do that because there are a lot of words in these texts that are unfamiliar, and indeed that aren't used today anymore. But the point is that we're trying to understand the past, and again, how it came to be that the Mona Lisa became this like super important, super influential artwork in the 19th century, like hundreds of years after it was painted. As I mentioned, it sat in it circulated through private collections for hundreds of years until I think it was 1793. It was finally displayed in public for Parisian audiences when the Louvre opened through the process of secularization, thanks to Napoleon. Okay, so having said that, I'm going to turn to the texts that are on your Courselink. Just very quickly review the one that was by Walter Pater. He said, he emphasizes her age, her timelessness, her universality, the fact that the Mona Lisa, again, it's not a portrait of an individual anymore. She's like a prototype, like a symbol of timelessness. She's also a matriarch. There are several motherly references in here. So he says she's older than the rocks among which she sits. She's like like the vampire. She has been dead many times and learned the secrets of the grave. She's been a diver in deep seas and keeps their fallen day about her. A fallen day, that's such an interesting and evocative image. She's a diver in to be at the bottom of a deep sea and to keep the fallen day about her. That is so visually evocative for me. I think of like something at the bottom of the sea, where the light is just sort of flickering about them. She has trafficked for strange webs with Eastern merchants. Now, I think that word webs refers to fabrics or like scarves, gauzes, things like that, veils. So she's trafficked for strange webs with Eastern merchants. And as Leda was the mother Helen of Troy, and as Saint Anne the mother of Mary. So here he's sort of situating her among these great matriarchs. She's a great matriarch. She's like the mother of humanity, or the mother of the underworld, or something like that. That's what those associations are. And all this has been to her but as the sound of lyres and flutes. The lyre was, from antiquity, a little like harp that you held in your hand. Of course, a flute. So like all of these things are just kind of like, musical notes floating around her. Very simple and atmospheric, but, not the whole symphony. And lives only in the delicacy with which it has molded the changing lineaments. Lineaments are kind of like the characteristic lines in her face. So this, her timelessness has molded her face. It has tinged the eyelids and the hands. So that was the first of many poems written about this painting in the 19th century that kind of reframed it and gave it a symbolist bent. It was no longer really a work of, or people didn't really see it as a work of the Renaissance imagination or a product of Leonardo da Vinci. Rather, she was kind of a being that was a little bit like the Sphinx. Again, full of mystery, totally enigmatic, timeless. She's compared with a vampire. Really quite a dark and symbolic reading. Almost as if, remember some of the poems by Baudelaire that I read you? It has that kind of feel to it. Now, the other poem, that was written was by a Frenchman called Theophile Gautier. And this dates, actually it's a little bit earlier, 1867. It's from a book called Les Dieux et les Demi-Dieux de la Peintre. So the gods and the demigods of painting, from 1867. This is like just the most amazing text. It's just so... among other things, it's so over the top and unbelievable. I don't know what Leonardo would think if he ever read that, but I'm sure he is laughing his head off, because I don't think that he fully intended to make this kind of a impression with this portrait that he painted, with this commission. Okay, so Theophile Gautier, this is the second of your texts on Courselink. He writes, and again, full of vocab that you might want to look up or write down, because there's a lot of words that aren't familiar to us. Okay, the sinuous serpentine mouth turned up at the corners in a violet penumbra. Penumbra is kind of like a shadow. So the sinuous, and sinuous, is that like, in fact, I'm going to look that up right now. Sinuous, winding, windy, serpentine, curving, twisting, meandering. Okay, the sinuous serpentine mouth. Her mouth is the shape of a serpent. Turned up at the corners in a violet penumbra, in a violet shadow, mocks the viewer with such sweetness, grace, and superiority that we feel timid, like schoolboys in the presence of a duchess. So the head with its violet shadows, half perceived as through a black gauze, that's through a veil, a sort of a piece of fabric that you can see through. So half perceived as through a black gauze, makes you dream for hours and pursues you in memory like the motif of a symphony. Under the form, expressed is felt a vague, indefinite, inexpressible concept like a musical thought. One is moved and troubled. Previously seen images pass before one's gaze, confused and soft, smiling familiarly and whispering languorous confidences in your ear. I'm going to look up languorous. I think I misspelled it. Langu, L-A-N-G-O-R-O-U-S. Not, oh, maybe, here we go. Characterized as tiredness or inactivity, especially of a pleasurable kind. Characterized by an oppressive stillness. Tiredness or inactivity. So, okay. Under the form expressed is felt a vague, indefinite, inexpressible concept like a musical thought. One is moved and troubled. Previously seen images pass before one's gaze, confused and soft, smiling familiarly and whispering languorous confidences in your ear. Repressed desire and desperate hopes struggle painfully through a luminous shadow. Here's the most important sentence, I think. And you discover that your melancholy, not Mona Lisa's, your melancholy, your depression, springs from the fact that the Jaconde, or Mona Lisa, remember that's another name for her, received 3 centuries ago the confession of your love with the same mocking smile she still wears today. That is the bomb. That last sentence. She received 3 centuries ago the confession of your love with the same mocking smile she still wears today. That last sentence tells you, according to Theophile Gautier, what her smile is about. And he tells you, or he tells us, that it's a mocking smile. It's not a happy smile. It's not a content smile. It's a mocking smile. Now, what is it to mock somebody? Let's look that up. I don't know if you're familiar with that term. So in my dictionary, it says to tease or laugh in a scornful or contemptuous manner, to make something seem laughably unreal or impossible, to mimic scornfully or contemptuously. So, for something that is an object of derision, right? So to laugh at somebody scornfully or contemptuously, basically, she is mocking the viewer. And who's the viewer? Well, Gautier has said somewhere else earlier on in this text that we are like schoolboys in the presence of a duchess. Now, she wasn't a duchess, but she was a rich woman. She was the wife of a silk merchant in Venice. Venice or Florence? I can't remember now. Maybe it was Florence. Anyway, she was a well-to-do woman. And this author is imagining that we are like schoolboys. And according to the last sentence, we have confessed our love to this upper class, super wealthy woman who's like a duchess. That's what Theophile Gautier is imagining. We are schoolboys. We've confessed our love. We've confessed we have a crush on her. We've confessed, I've been admiring you from a distance for I've noticed you days ago. I'm just so in love with you, so enamored. And her response is this mocking smile. It's a condescending smile. She's there receiving this confession of love from somebody that is way younger than her, on a different economic level, in a different social status. And her response is to mock them. It's to smile in a really condescending way, as if to say, you must be kidding. You are not in my league. You will never get a chance to be with me. I will never return those feelings. That's the mocking smile. That is why she's smiling. It's not because Leonardo told her some kind of joke. It's not because she's so happy that she gave birth to the first child of her husband. There's all kinds of theories floating around about why she's smiling. According to this author, she's amused. She's flattered, but she's amused and entertained by us, the viewer. Now, there's a kind of like a secondary ripple effect of this text, I think, which is that this kind of the adoration that is suggested in this confession of love kind of continues today when we think about all the people who flock all the way over to Paris and stand in line and spend a lot of money on the tickets to go and go into the Louvre. It's almost as if this compulsion for so many people to go and see the Mona Lisa, kind of on autopilot. Nobody really knows why they're going. We're all just going because everybody else is going. It's not like any of us know anything about painting, or we have any personal connection with this painting or with the sitter, with Mona Lisa herself. We're just part of we're kind of partaking in a kind of a social phenomenon, like a craze. We're partaking in celebrity, the celebrity of a painting. And that's a kind of continuation of the same kind of adoration that this writer is referring to. So it's almost as if he's really captured something bigger than just the idea of a schoolboy confessing his love. We all confess our love to her. We're all kind of caught up in some kind of obsession, some kind of what was the word I used? Oops, I've lost my screen. We all have a crush on her. And she just sits back, as she has been sitting back for centuries, and smiles. She sits back and mocks us. She finds the whole thing hilarious, that we all crowd into that room, that we put all this layers of glasses in front of her, all this security, armed security. We just keep going and paying homage to her, and she just sits back and smiles back at us. That's also what the smile has become, is kind of a ritual. We go and smile at her, she smiles back at us. So it's a really complex set of interactions. I'm going to read this text one more time because it's so fabulous. Again, by Theophile Gautier from 1867 in Les Dieux et les Demi-Dieux de la Peintre. The sinuous serpentine mouth, turned up at the corners in a violet penumbra, mocks the viewer with such sweetness and grace and superiority that we feel timid like schoolboys in the presence of a duchess. So the head with its violet shadows, half perceived as through a black gauze, makes you dream for hours and pursues you in memory like the motif of a symphony. Under the form expressed is felt a vague, indefinite, inexpressible concept like a musical thought. One is moved and troubled. Previously seen images pass before one's gaze, confused and soft, smiling familiarly and whispering languorous confidences in your ear. Languorous, I've forgotten what languorous is. The feeling of being tired, maybe exhausted, confident, secrets in your ear. Repressed desire and desperate hopes struggle painfully through a luminous shadow. So it's very shadowy. And you discover that your melancholy springs from the fact that the Jaconde, or that the Mona Lisa, received 3 centuries ago the confession of your love with the same mocking smile she still wears today. It's so awesome. I love that piece of writing. And now you know why she's smiling. You know what kind of smile she has. Yeah. Okay. Finally, we have a third text written by 2 really interesting authors that went under the pseudonym of Michael Field. Now, Michael Field was in reality 2 women. I think I mentioned this in class today. They went by the name of Catherine Brady and Edith Cooper. They were an aunt and a niece who at the same time lived together as a married couple. I don't know anything more about that relationship, just that. But they wrote under a pseudonym, so like under a fake name. And the reason for that was that they were, this time, the 19th century, there was a lot of discrimination against women doing anything based on their sex. And so doing anything slightly outside of what was prescribed, what society said was okay, such as being a wife or associated with domestic activities, being a washerwoman, cleaning lady, that kind of thing, was really, really seen as deviant and abnormal. And so certainly writing a book of poetry would not have gone over well. It would have been frowned upon. And so consequently, these ladies used a pseudonym and published under a man's name, as did many other authors, so that they would be taken seriously and so that they would somehow acquire the authority that came along with a man's name. They wanted their poetry to be judged on its own merits, rather than judged on the gender of the authors. Anyway, they published this book of poems called Sight and Song. Do I have a date for that? I must have it somewhere. I don't have it right. Oh, 1892, so a little bit later in England. And the excerpt for it is here under Courselink. It's called La Gioconda by Michael Field. And I'll read it here. It says, historic, sidelong, implicating eyes, a smile of velvet's luster on the cheek. Calm lips, the smile leads upward. Hand that lies glowing and soft. The patience in its rest of cruelty that waits and does not seek for prey. A dusky forehead and a breast where twilight touches ripeness amorously. Behind her, crystal rocks, a sea and skies of evanescent blue on cloud and creek. Landscape that shines, suppressive of its zest for those vicissitudes by which men die. So immediately the word that I want to look up is vicissitudes, V-I-C-I-S-S-I-T. Means a change of circumstance or fortune, typically one that is unwelcome or unpleasant. Or also an alternation between opposite or contrasting things, such as the vicissitude of seasons. Okay, I think I might read it again. Historic, sidelong, implicating eyes, a smile of velvet's luster on the cheek. Calm lips, the smile leads upward. Hand that lies glowing and soft, the patience in its rest of cruelty. Of cruelty that waits and does not seek for prey. A dusky forehead and a breast where twilight touches ripeness. For prey. A dusky forehead and a breast where twilight touches ripeness amorously. Behind her, crystal rocks, a sea and skies of evanescent blue on cloud and creek. Landscape that shines suppressive of this zest for those vicissitudes by which men die. She's also a femme fatale, also deeply evocative, all these kind of experiential, sensual things floating around her. Again, we're far from just a stock portrait of the local girl who's made good. We're in this hugely symbolic realm where, like I said, there's all this kind of atmospheric language, all this really emotional vocabulary. Everything seems so over the top and yet kind of obscure, kind of imprecise. I feel like this poem and even, I would say, all three of them could so easily have been written by Baudelaire. They have exactly the same kind of temperament and, I don't know, sense of enigma, sense of mystery. They have absolutely recontextualized her into this very ambiguous, shadowy world, underworld of, vicissitudes, I guess is the word here. And so this is, I think when you read through these three texts, you can see quite clearly how, again, this painting was kind of showcased as a symbol. She's not a concrete woman anymore. She's not her own person. She's not the wife of this rich merchant. She's like a prototype of the century. She's definitely on par with the Sphinx. She is just this eternal, there's no other way to say it, eternal feminine. That was a term that was used at the time. Everybody, this kind of like added to the hype in which everybody started flocking to see her, even in the 19th century, and we continue to do so today. We are reenacting that crush that Gautier talks about. And she is reenacting the mocking smile that apparently is her response to our ongoing behavior. And it's a timeless cycle that never seems to break. We keep going. She keeps returning our gaze. A little bit like Olympia. Not unlike Olympia's gaze. She's almost bored with it. She's mildly amused. The corners of her lips are slightly turned up. It's a wonderful predicament. Okay, I think I will wrap up. I think my analysis or my discussion about La Jaconde, and we will reconvene on Friday when we'll talk about another 19th century woman. Actually, we're going to go on a bit of a tangent and look at an American woman known as Lady Liberty, who originated in France, and also look at a painting by Courbet of a couple of lesbians called The Sleepers, and here's some presentations. Okay, with that, have a good evening, and I'll see you on Friday. Bye-bye.